US Intellectual Property Attaché for Eurasia, US Patent and Trademark Office. Dorian Mazurkevich is the US Intellectual Property Attaché for Eurasia, based at the US Embassy in Kiev. He previously worked at the USPTO and as an IP attaché for Latin America. With a background in patent litigation, he has extensive experience in IP enforcement and trade secret theft. Joining our first speaker in this session is Mrs. Hande Karakulah, Legal and Scientific Director at L'Oréal Turkey, a company which devoted their energy and competencies solely to one business, beauty. Born in 1978, Ms. Hande is a Legal and Scientific Director and Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Country Leader for L'Oréal Turkey. With a master's in EU law and 20+ years in multinational companies, she specializes in marketing regulations, labor relations, contracts, and IP litigation, and supports civic initiatives. Our second speaker, Mrs. Yasemin Aktaş, founder and partner at Abion. Mrs. Aktaş is a renowned IP litigator with over 14 years of experience, leads Abion's Turkish office, and is an expert in trademarks, designs, patents, and copyrights, supporting multinational companies across diverse industries. She is recognized by prestigious legal publications like WTR 1000, IAM 1000.
Hello, hi everyone. It's a little bit difficult to be the first speaker after lunch, but I prepared some visuals to keep you alive. L'Oréal, for over a century, it has dedicated itself to cater the beauty needs of men and women around the world with various brands that you can see on my slide. We have 36 renowned brands from all over the world to serve to all the needs and desires of beauty consumers around the world. As you can see, our brands, I'm guessing especially for the ladies in the room, they are pretty familiar. They are very well known and attractive brands to the consumers, which makes them a target for the counterfeiters around the world, and in our case, especially in Turkey. These illicit activities not only undermine the integrity of our brands, but also pose significant risks to our consumers who may unknowingly purchase a product which are fake and which does not go through the very rigorous safety and quality processes of L'Oréal. Of course, for protecting our brands and our consumers, we use many different tools to tackle the counterfeit issue. For example, the advanced packaging technologies, our legal actions, our online monitoring tools, offline efforts, all of them together, we are trying to prevent and combat the counterfeit issue around the world. With the rise of e-commerce in the world and listing a counterfeit, a fake brand, being very easy in the e-com websites or digitally anywhere in social media, in marketplaces, it's kind of became a safe haven for the counterfeiters. As you can see, I'm going to show you the tool that L'Oréal uses and some numbers from our tool, but many companies are either creating their own tools to actually monitor the online counterfeit activities, or they are hiring law firms or agencies who do this for multiple clients. In L'Oréal, we have our own monitoring tool. Our tool uses technologies such as web crawling, data analytics, or visual image recognition. And once a potential counterfeit product is detected, the potential counterfeit product is being sent to the teams who actually verify if the product is original or not. If the product is understood to be counterfeit, then we immediately get in touch with the platform and get this, take down the seller. You can see some numbers. This starts from 2021, but of course there is a base. But compared to you can see those numbers compared to the base where we first launched the product. Unfortunately, as the listing numbers in the platforms and websites increase, the counterfeit activity also increases, and the percentage of infringement increases. For example, sorry, I didn't bring my glasses with me, so I'm struggling a little bit to see the numbers there. For example, you can see in 2024, the infringing listings were 97% up compared to the base. This slide is showing all the platforms, but when we go to the Trendyol results, here you can see Trendyol is the biggest e-com marketplace in Turkey, which has robust trademark protection processes. Therefore, compared to 97% infringing sellers in general, in Trendyol we have only 27. This I wanted to show you because this demonstrates the importance of having partners, having e-com partners who respect the trademark rights that we have and who also establish processes to take down the counterfeit fake products, or if the laws allow getting unauthorized products immediately when the client or the right owner requests. When it comes to a total counterfeit combat, of course, the offline part is maybe even more important than the online part. Turkey, you may know, I don't know whether this was discussed in the previous panels, but unfortunately, Turkey is one of the biggest counterfeit producers for Europe, and third in the world after China and Hong Kong. So you might imagine that there is a major counterfeit issue that needs to be tackled by almost all industries and all brands in our territory. So those are the three very important steps, or three important fronts that we see this fight mostly. The first one is, first, in order to have a proper protection, you need to register your brands in the customs surveillance system. Of course, I'm not an IP lawyer. It is just under my responsibility, but of course we have very reputable, trusted partners who counsel us on those. So I'm not going to lecture you on IP law, but just to give you a glimpse of it, you register your brand to the customs system, and the customs officers, if they see a suspected product, they have a right to suspend the product. And they immediately inform you, either through the online system or through other means. And then your lawyers can immediately go there, understand whether the products are fake or not, and you can get the relevant legal proceedings initiated afterwards. So I think this is important for all the brands. If you're suspecting an export-import activity, to do this. The second thing is market investigations. Again, this is necessary for, especially for two reasons. First, most of the time, even though the business tells you that there is a counterfeit problem, most of the time you don't know the magnitude and scale and the geography, whether it is located, it's focused on a single territory or if it's broader everywhere. So first, just in order to take a picture, to identify the magnitude, you do market research. And secondly, it is crucial in order to convince the prosecutor to get a seizure and raid order, you need to have proper evidence, and you also get the evidence through the market investigations. So the market investigations could be literally in that specific city district, or through open sources from internet, from different official websites, even marketplaces. You can just test order online, and you can track the cargo lines, the transportation lines, etc. So there are many resources and sources to get the information. And the strategic projects is the third one. I think I can say that strategic project combines the first two with an enhancement of close interaction with the officials in the districts. I mean, be them the law enforcement agencies, be them the customs offices, the customs general directorate. It is, especially in Turkish culture, it is very important to find a partner who can go there and drink tea with the customs officers to convince them that your brand requires protection. So, of course, providing trainings, being involved in all the customs-related trainings, to give them the tools to differentiate your original products from the fake products is also key to have a full-fledged 360 degrees protection plan. To cut the story short, I want to share a very recent example of a strategic project for us. Our beloved İpek brand. İpek is a very well-known hair care brand in Turkey, and as it is value for money, as it is efficient, as it smells wonderful, etc., it is also very popular in Iraq. So some people, some counterfeiters have realized that there is a kind of hole in the system that they thought that they could start producing fake products to export to Iraq. So when we first realized it, unfortunately, the business teams were like telling us the counterfeit trade is constituting a very, I mean, I'm not going to tell the number, but a considerable amount of our trade was counterfeit. So we were bleeding big time. And then we decided to have a specific focus on İpek. What we did is just all the steps that I was just talking about, the customs registration, in-depth markets investigations, being there in person all the time, talking to potential illicit traders, using all the intelligence we can, going there to every single customs office, training the customs officials, going to Ankara to talk to general director, etc. We did everything. We ticked all the boxes, and as you can see from the slide, we launched this project in 2023. The previous year we had only seized 16 products, and that was totally by chance. The law enforcement agencies were raiding a warehouse, and among many detergents they found 16 bottles of İpek. But when we specifically decided to tackle this, the first year we had a couple of seizures with 99,000 units confiscated, and 2024 numbers are even more promising, as we have confiscated more than 120 products. I have many pictures from many raids, but I specifically want to show the last one, as we managed to confiscate production materials, machineries, and production lines, along with many products. So I'm especially proud of this. So all in all, I don't want to prolong the presentation, but I just want to share the fact that we all know that it requires a lot of patience, a lot of money, and a lot of effort to actually manage to prevent counterfeit. However, if you take all the necessary actions and if you don't give up in the end, I think it is worth the effort. When you see that your trade numbers, your financial KPIs are going up again and your business loves you, I think it's worth the effort. Thank you.
Hande, thank you for that very interesting presentation. And if there's any questions, I think once the three of us finish our presentations, then we'll welcome questions from the audience. Now I'd like to introduce Yasmin to the podium for her presentation.
I'm going to talk about Turkey's position, geographical position in counterfeiting, mostly, rather than like the other areas, because I think Hande mentioned of that enoughly. And then Turkey's geographical position in counterfeiting is really critical because, like, although Hong Kong and China still dominate the anti-counterfeiting strategies, Turkey comes still in the biggest three countries, and according to the last watch list published by European Commission, these three jurisdictions, China, Hong Kong, and Turkey, had 90% of all counterfeit and piracy products around the globe between 2011 and 2019. And China was the first one with 70%, and then Turkey was the second one with Turkey was the second one with 9%, and then Hong Kong was the third one between 6 and 6.5%. And in the same watch list, also Turkey was recognized as a main jurisdiction in some sectors for counterfeiting, which are clothing, cosmetics, and medicine. With the high volume of cosmetics and medicine in Turkey, of course, that raised a highlight for Turkey to watch for EU Health Commission as well. And then there is another research, global research about the volume of counterfeits around the world, and that was published by US Chamber of Commerce, Global IP Center report of 2016. And in this report, Turkey was listed as the fourth biggest market after China, Hong Kong, Ukraine, India, and Russia. And the rankings of Turkey, according to different research, are like, for example, fourth globally in counterfeiting activities, and second in luxury products and textiles after China, and second again in perfumes and cosmetics after China. I think this is related to you. And fifth in the piracy visits. And what makes Turkey one of the biggest counterfeit markets globally? Turkey is a transit country, the famous bridge between Europe, Asia, and Middle East. As an outcome of this, of course, products are not produced in Turkey, but then they may be just transiting through Turkey to abroad, from where they were manufactured at the first place. And the second is that Turkey has advanced manufacturing industry as well. As a result of this, products may be produced here but may not be sold here, but still you may, like brand owners can catch them before they go abroad through customs. Because of all these two points, actually they address brand owners to pay more attention to customs monitoring system in Turkey, which is very active, which is the actually most active way if you are not especially in regulated areas, which is at the moment most active and effective way to protect your brand against physical counterfeits, especially for example, with the rise of the tourism in Turkey after COVID, especially the summer holiday areas like the southern Turkey has become really popular for counterfeiting products, and day by day the infringers locate them more. And then as a result of this, brand owners now need to pay more attention to now for the in the fight against counterfeiting and piracy, I think raising awareness is the key as well, because mostly according to the research by IPO published in 2017, high percentage of customer respondents in Cyprus, Greece, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Estonia, Slovenia, Malta and Latvia think that it is acceptable to buy counterfeits if the original product is really expensive. They don't see any moral cause in buying the original one against the cheaper counterfeit products, especially for fashion brands and the brands don't concern health. They may be more preferable for the customers. And according to the same research, Turkey is listed having the same perspective with these customers as well, and which means that in Turkey as well, customers think that there is no reason to go and buy expensive original product when there is a cheaper version, counterfeit version, especially with fashion brands social media accounts becoming very popular, and then leading people that you need to follow some kind of trends, but if you don't wanna invest that much, then you end up with counterfeits. This once again highlights the importance of raising awareness in the fight against counterfeiting, especially among young population. And for this, actually, there are some associations focusing on these awareness projects, and one of them is IMTA. I don't know if you are familiar with this, most probably you are already. They have annual campaign committee and they are very active, they held over 1,000 sessions among last 5 years in Turkey as well, at the high schools and university, which helped a lot to raise awareness, and also it helped to address young students and juniors to specialize in IP more, because there was a cause to fight and they were willing to go for it. To fight against counterfeiting and piracy, and as Hande mentioned as well, customs recorders are it must be done. And then customs trainings also, they are important to establish close relationships with customs officers, and then point out how to recognize, identify the counterfeits. And investigations are also important, and also timing of investigations are important, because if it's the summer season, for example, if you are if your brand produces coats and winter clothes, of course you need to do investigation before the winter season to become aware of the manufacturers and then take the action before the season. Timing of investigation is also key, and evidence gathering is always key for Turkey, because it's very difficult now to obtain a raid order without comprehensive evidence. And challenging with online counterfeiting is also very important, especially after COVID. There are pop-up spam websites as well. And then to deal with that, it's important to have internal or external online brand protection service provider. Or you may have your own system, as Hande mentioned as well. And also setting up online voids for trademarks, domain names, social media, is also important, especially for domain names. It's now easier in Turkey to have TR domain name, which was more difficult in the future, in the past. And then and if we are gonna talk about to fight against counterfeiting, I think first public awareness, and then brands should work together against counterfeiting and piracy, because if they become together, and then they will have more budget, because we usually suggest this strategy as well, especially for brands in the same sector. With this, they can have more budget to fight together, and then if they go to public authorities together, it may be more convincing for public authorities as well to act against counterfeits. And the other thing is that spending budget is something, it may feel sometimes that at the beginning you may not get return in the short term, but in the long run, or in time, it will be there more. I can just say this. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Great, thank you, Yasmin, for that very interesting presentation. In many respects, I'll be building off of what she had presented on, specifically regarding investigations and evidence gathering. But first, a little bit about myself. My name is Dorian Mazurkevich, and I serve as the Regional Intellectual Property Attaché for the US government. I'm based in the region, and I represent the US Patent and Trademark Office, which is the counterpart agency of Turkpatent. There's about 12 intellectual property attachés that the US government has around the world. And what we do is partner with the intellectual property offices in various countries to provide technical assistance and support. And we also work on intellectual property enforcement matters, working with customs officials, prosecutors, judges, and also the police in order to increase enforcement against counterfeit and pirated products. And so I thought it would be interesting to present to you a specific prosecution that occurred in the United States. It relates to one of the biggest counterfeiting rings that was taken down by the US Department of Justice. And it occurred in the port of Newark, which is the third largest port of the United States. It's right outside of New York City, so you see in the photo there, that's the skyline of New York City. It's the 22nd biggest port in the world, and it handles over 3 million containers each year. Now, the way the investigation started is there were undercover agents working for US Customs at the port, and there was requests to bribe those customs officials in order to allow containers with counterfeit goods to enter into the US ports. The criminals were offering $50,000 to $60,000 per shipping container. Through the course of the investigation and prosecution, the value of the counterfeit goods that were being shipped was over $300 million. It was a 2-year investigation, and over the course of that time, prosecutors were able to get permission from the judges to listen into phone calls, to monitor electronic communications. And so I'll be presenting you some of the evidence that was brought in through that case and through that investigation. First one we have here is an email from the suspect to the confidential informant. This was an undercover law enforcement official that was pretending to work for the customs port. And the email states from the suspect, "Thank you for your help. I think you know what's going on. If you trust me, just let me know what is the fee going to be out." And the response from the undercover is, "I can have someone wire your money anywhere, but I need the container first. I think that's not a problem for you if you have some kind of hookup." And so this is how the investigation began, is through this correspondence that was tipped off by a customs broker, and then law enforcement started interacting with this criminal network. And there's many chains in this criminal ring. I think we're all kind of aware of how many different links there are, but I'll walk through some of those here. First, there were agents that were paying off the undercover officials at port in order to allow the containers to enter. There would be managing of those containers coming in. Many times, they would have to create stolen or fraudulent identities regarding either the shipping containers or the companies that claim to own those shipping containers. There would be falsification of documents, such as bills of lading, and then there would be people involved in transporting those goods from the containers to storage warehouses. Once those goods were stored in warehouses up and down the east coast of the United States, within those warehouses, there would be other people in the criminal network that would modify the goods and change them so that they would look authentic. Then there were other entities that would distribute those counterfeit goods to various retailers. In addition, the proceeds from the sale of those counterfeit goods would then be wired back through bank transfers back to China. And usually those transmissions were structured so that they would try to avoid detection by US tax police. In a sense, this was laundering proceeds of the crime. And then once this money made its way back to China, members of the criminal enterprise would then decide which products they wanted to buy again, and then they would work with the factory to get those goods manufactured and then ship them back through containers. So in a sense, it was one round network. As I mentioned, there were wiretaps, meaning the phone calls of the criminals was also being monitored. So I'm going to share with you some of those recordings, the transcripts of those recordings between some of the criminals. Suspect A, he says, "Me and Suspect C, we made about 10 social security card numbers." The response, "Where did you get them?" "We made it up. We have the stuff at the port already. We have to do it." Now in the United States, a social security number is an identification number that is unique to each individual. And so when you're dealing with identity theft, the social security number is key. And so in the context of this criminal investigation, the criminals were either stealing identification numbers or making them up in order to conceal the true identity of those involved in the counterfeiting ring. Now I mentioned the goods would be shipped into the United States, but they would be concealed so that US Customs, if they were to open a container, wouldn't recognize them as being counterfeit. Here's an example of one of the products in its concealed format. Now this is a UGG boot. The brand is UGG. It's an Australian company. And behind there you see a label that just says XMX. If you were to remove that label, you would then see the legitimate or the real brand name, which is UGG. And so the product would be shipped in with this XMX label, and then within warehouses, those products would be modified. In addition to having false labels on the products, there's also a false undersole for this product. Part of the reason in this instance is because the company UGG actually has a trademark for the design of the undersole of the shoe. In addition, what you see here is the criminal network would also use generic labels on the box. So here again, the box is shipped as XMX, but if you were to peel off the top part, you would then see the legitimate brand UGG. Now once the products, the other thing I'll mention regarding this specific matter is why choose XMX? Earlier Hande and also Yasmin had mentioned the importance of reporting with US customs or customs authorities in general. That involves registering a trademark for the brand so that customs authorities can be on the lookout and aware of whether counterfeit products under that brand are being shipped. I'm going to show you now the US Customs recordation process. This is what our database looks like. If you were to type in, this is the database right here. If you were to type in XMX into that database, then you would get no results. There it says, sorry, we don't have any under that search query. But if you were to type into the US Customs database the brand name UGG, you would then get this response, which provides the name of the product, the effective date of the recordation, the type of product, and also the owner and who to contact for US Customs. And this is based in many respects also on the trademark. So this here is the trademark registration for the UGG boot as well. So returning back to part of the evidence within the criminal investigation. The one suspect. Can you be more detailed on the invoice? Can you put in what the product is and what it is made of? Let's talk about what the company makes because it affects how much the customs is going to tax. Let me check it out first before you send the invoice. I want to see which kind of products has the lowest tax. We have to be very careful with this because if not, we are not going to make money. So in this instance, they wanted to make sure on the bills of lading, the products that were identified weren't taxed at a heavier rate than, let's say, the footwear that they were actually shipping in. And so I'll provide you an example. This is a copy of the harmonized tariff schedule of the United States. And it shows the amount of taxes that are imposed on the products that are being imported. So here you see what the legitimate product, if they had declared it properly, would have been, and that's sports footwear, which is taxed at a 20% rate based on the value of the import. Now, what did they declare instead on their customs declaration forms that they were shipping in on those containers? They declared that they were shipping in clothes hangers, which instead is only taxed at a 3.2% rate, hairpins, which is taxed at a rate of 5.1%, and also magnets, which is only taxed at a rate of 4.9%. So here you can see how the counterfeiters were very careful in thinking through how can they best maximize their profits as part of their criminal conspiracy. Now returning back to some additional evidence from this case. Next year, let's work with gloves and print North Face on them. It's easy to print on them. With the print on them, it is sold for $36 a dozen at wholesale. If you order this week, you won't get them until next week. So it is too late to work on it this year. It is easy to make money with gloves. Let's get 10,000 dozens of gloves, put the prints on, and I have machines, several machines. So a few things to point out about this conversation. One is the criminals are very much looking ahead in terms of the future season, what will be profitable. They're starting anticipating that in the winter time there's going to be a larger demand for North Face jackets, which is a winter type jacket that is very, very popular. And also you'll notice that they're also deciding on how they're going to put the counterfeit labels and brands onto the products once they're shipped in. So as you can see, they're very thorough in trying to understand what they have to do as part of getting these products ultimately to market, and then also the profit that they want to make. As you notice, they're also speaking about what the cost of wholesale products would be, so they can estimate if this is a worthwhile product that they should start counterfeiting. Here's an additional conversation which really goes to them trying to identify products for the market. This counterfeit iPhone, do you think that there are people who want it? I tell you the truth, I did it before. Over here, there isn't much people who want it. Maybe in South America, there are people who want it. If you need, I can ask about it for you. So this demonstrates that they are testing out the different markets to understand if there's a demand for the product. Obviously, they feel that there isn't any demand for counterfeit iPhones in the US. It's not a very common product that US consumers would buy off of the street from a vendor. And instead, they've identified South America as a potential market for counterfeit iPhones. Now, in South America, iPhones and electronics are very, very heavily taxed. And so that, again, provides them an opportunity to maximize profits. The other thing this slide or this transcript shows is this network is very large. They have connections in other countries and other regions, which enables them to start communicating with counterparts to the extent they want to enter into other markets. Now, I mentioned in the earlier slides that the money that was gathered from the sale of these goods would then be wired back to China in order to buy more products. Now, under US law, bank transfers or any sort of transaction with a financial institution, which is more than 10,000 US dollars, must be reported to the tax police, to the tax authorities within the US government. Now, what did they do in this instance? They ended up doing bank transfers worth over 20 million US dollars. But in each instance, they would make sure that when they were wiring that money, it fell below the threshold of 10,000 US dollars, which would have required the financial institution to report the transaction to US tax authorities. And here's the forms that a bank needs to fill out when they suspect there is a transmission of more than $10,000. This is required in order to safeguard the US financial institutions and very much to prevent against money laundering. So to comply with this, a bank will have to fill out this specific form, a currency transaction report. And on the second form, if there is suspicious activity, the bank institution also has to complete this form called a Suspicious Activity Report by Money Services Businesses. And within this report, there is specific boxes where you can say what the suspicion is. And there I've checked off the box, money laundering and structuring. Structuring is considered a federal crime, and what it involves is making sure that the transactions fall below the $10,000 limit for reporting purposes. So in a sense, the financial transaction is being artificially structured or created to avoid that reporting. And ultimately, this reporting would go to the financial US Department of Treasury and our investigative units there in order to investigate money laundering. Now, returning back to additional evidence from the case. They were involved in selling many types of products. A lot of it was apparel, but there was also cosmetics that were being counterfeited and sold on the markets. So suspect C. The cosmetics are counterfeit, but of good quality. All I care about is to make money, other things do not matter. Suspect D responds, but it's necessary to do business with a clear conscience. And the response is, well, then go be a monk. Now, over the course of this investigations, the suspects at some point realized that they're either being followed or perhaps they were being monitored. And so slowly, over the course of the investigations, they started becoming more and more suspicious. And here you start hearing their concerns regarding the work or the crimes they were involved in. Suspect B says, "It is difficult to work on the counterfeit merchandise. It's like sitting on a floating boat. You don't know when it will be overturned. The money you make for working on the counterfeit stuff is not real money. It is like a gamble." So, after all this evidence was collected, a successful prosecution was brought. 29 different people, mostly Chinese, were charged, and there you see the copy of the court case matter. And there were 4 different charges that were brought against this criminal network. Conspiracy to evade financial reporting requirements, which brings with it $250,000 fine and 5 years in prison. This relates to that money laundering matter regarding the structuring of financial transactions that I mentioned to you. Second crime was trafficking in counterfeit goods, $2 million fine and 10 years in prison. Third was smuggling. As it was mentioned earlier, they weren't declaring what the goods were that they were actually bringing into the U.S. courts. So that penalty comes with it a fine of $250,000 and 20 years in prison. And also the crime of money laundering, and that was a fine of $500,000, so $500,000 and 20 years in prison. So some lessons to gather from this investigation and prosecution. There's many players involved in such a criminal conspiracy ring: manufacturers, importers, deliverers, sellers, and I think each of those is an opportunity for intervention by investigators and by law enforcement. As was mentioned, criminals will traffic in anything that will make money, and the product may change depending on the popularity and the timing of the year. They can be very lucrative, and they will attempt to structure financial transactions and all the profits they have to avoid the detection. Fraud is a key tool, whether it's fraudulent shipping documents, fake identities, misdeclaring of cargo, and they work in a loosely connected network that involves other illicit activities. Now, I mentioned drug trafficking here in this lesson is because as part of this investigation, it was learned that some of these entities were also involved in transporting methamphetamine, a illegal drug, in another case that was concurrently being investigated. So this just shows that there is some overlap in terms of what criminals get involved in. And again, moving on to this issue of no concern for public health and safety, as was admitted during the telephone transcription. So I'll just close with the quote that the U.S. Attorney General had made as part of this investigation, which I mentioned was one of the largest criminal counterfeiting rings taken down by the U.S. government. The cost of counterfeit goods is not limited to massive financial harm to businesses and consumers. Criminals can exploit the same channels to import other material that threatens our health and safety. And we remain dedicated to our global interagency cooperation and long-term investigations like this one to ensure that criminals who see ports as a gateway to the America black market instead face justice. So thank you. I hope you found that presentation useful and insightful.